Hello, Revolve Bible Church. Pastor Jake here. This is the third installment of this week's worth of 5-Minute Connects as we look at what is the gospel. The two prior videos are posted down below. You can check that out and be caught up to speed with where we are at. Yesterday, we looked at God and who God is and his violent reaction toward sin, being a holy and perfectly pure God. And the day before that, we looked at the introduction of what the gospel is from a bird's eye perspective. Today, we're looking at mankind. And as I said yesterday, to get to the good news, we first have to understand the bad news. And the bad news is that you and I are sinners and that we are born into sin. We have inherited the sin of our first parents, Adam and Eve, as they have sinned and transgressed God's law and word, stepping over what God had commanded them not to do. Now, being sinners, we are those who stand condemned under God. We find that in Romans 1:18, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness." You see, God deals aggressively with us as we are sinners because it's a part of his character. He must do that as the Holy One. But we ourselves too, as sinners, deal violently with God. We suppress his truth. We try to combat and fight God. There is a war that is being waged between God and between humanity. Romans 3:23 talks about we have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. There's a very tense and a very hostile relationship that God has with you and I. We don't seek after God. Paul goes on to say in Romans 23, in fact, there's no one who seeks after God. We want our own sin. And as you read through Romans chapter 1, verses 18 to the end of the chapter, Paul talks about just the depth of humanity's depravity, how bad we really are. It's not like there are some days where we want God, other days where we can care less. No, every single day of our life, because we were conceived in sin, we don't want the things of God, but we want the things that our wicked, depraved, and sick hearts desire. And it really doesn't take a scientist to realize that. We can look into our own lives and see poor and sinful and wicked decisions that we make, thoughts that we think, words that come out of our mouth that aren't honoring to God. What it demands is, well, first of all, what it makes really clear is that there is no hope for any one individual to possibly muster up the ability and strength to change themselves. There's no self-help video. There's no motivational guide or book that could possibly take you from where you're at in your sinful state and cause you to become progressively good and better. If that were the case, if that was our only chance, we would be hopeless. We are dead, Paul says in Ephesians 2, verse 1, in our sins, unable to affect or cause any spiritual change. No one could do it to themselves, and no one can do it to us. No one outside of ourselves can do it to us. No human. It must be God and God alone. We can't work our way to heaven. We must be, according to Matthew 5, perfect, like God is perfect. So that means, I hope as you're listening to this right now, that leaves you in a somber, sober, helpless state. Good. Because before you can be found, you need to get lost. And you need to understand that there's nothing you can do to save yourself except by God and God alone. And that's what we're going to look at tomorrow as we look at God's gracious and divine intervention in your life to save you. For that is your only hope, and it's my only hope, if we seek to flee from the wage of sin, which is death, and the inevitable punishment for sin, the wrath of God, and fiery hell forever. Join me tomorrow as we look to the solution for our biggest problem.